Hello and welcome back. Today we're looking at NICREW's C10 Aquarium LED. I have reviewed the older model of this on my channel, but this is the new version. So let's have a look at what this light can do. So basically this is NICREW's plant LED. This is the one that they are marketing towards growing plants specifically in your aquariums. So we should expect good things from this. There are some features on here that do set it apart from some of the other cheaper aquarium lights on the market. And we know that Amazon at the moment and other places is just flooded with cheap Chinese brand aquarium lights. NICREW, I would like to say, is on the more budget friendly pricing scale in terms of their LEDs, but I found them to be actually quite a good quality LED. And as you know, I've reviewed a lot of NICREW lights on this channel, including the older model of the NICREW C10, which is actually still running on my aquarium, and it's doing a really good job at growing my macroalgae. So that's the LED out of the package, and we can see all the features that it comes with. So straight away, the main difference, as far as I can see, is that we get a remote in this particular version, and we also have our IR sensor with an on and off button. I imagine when we turn it on, the colour of this light, or specifically the LED in the middle there, will change, and as we can see, it's got different things here to tell us which mode the light is on. We'll get to that in a second. We also have our mounting brackets. Like normal in most of these lights, we have these wire mounting brackets. They're pretty standard. They come in 95% of all of these types of budget-friendly LEDs. We have seen other similarly priced LEDs with different kinds of mounting brackets, but this is pretty much standard. We can see as well we've got 2 steps to it. So if you want to, you can adjust the height in sort of small increments using the different steps. I bought this model in the UK, and I have got a UK plug. I would imagine, should you buy this in another region, you'll get the appropriate plug. It is an inbuilt LED transformer in the plug, so there's no big block transformer to have to mount somewhere else. It's all done via this plug. This light does have quite a lot of features to it. It's one of the reasons why it's quite popular on Amazon. I have read the Amazon reviews and they are pretty positive. I'll go through the features when we look at the remote because they're all done via the remote. But if you want to quickly read these, you can obviously just pause the screen and you can read the instructions. So looking at the LED itself, let's get it out of this bubble wrap and we'll see what it's like. It has a nice slim profile and doesn't weigh too much either. And this is actually a decent profile. It's not too thick. It is quite square, but the other older version of the C10 was quite square compared to other NICREW lights which we reviewed, such as the Aqualux, which is a rounded edge. This one has quite a sharp, well, it's not sharp to cut yourself, but it is quite sharp in terms of its profile. I'm imagining this is some sort of aluminium. We've got our heatsink. What we're going to have to do is the standard test to see if we've got aluminium or metal under here, and we can quite clearly see that yes, there is, as expected, aluminium, I imagine. Which aluminium's the right kind of material for this because it is a good heat sink. Sometimes the cheaper LED lights are actually made from plastic, which isn't a very good conductor of heat, doesn't really remove the heat away from the LED board, which can cause failures quite quickly in the chips. So having aluminium is really important to draw that heat away, keep your LEDs running. What we've got underneath is our LED board. We've also got acrylic, I would say, covering the LEDs. What we don't have is any kind of siliconing in there, so there's no protection onto the chips. Now, other brands which I reviewed do silicone over their chips, which does prevent, in theory, the condensation, any condensation getting in here. It stops sort of degradation of the board and the chips, which I like to see. It is lacking on this particular model though, however. On the instructions, it doesn't say that this is IP68 rated, it says it's IP67 rated, which I believe is just splash resistance. So I won't be submerging this into any aquariums today, and it's safe to say that if you drop this in your aquarium, you'll probably end up losing some LEDs, if not the whole unit, but it depends how long you leave it submerged. So what I'm going to do now is turn it on and we can have a look at some of the features. So immediately we can see the makeup of the LEDs on here. We've got 2 strips of white LEDs. We've also got in the middle our RGBs. This is different to the previous model of C10. Let me just show you. So if you excuse the salt build-up, this is my older version of the C10, and we can quite clearly see that we've got separate blue and red LEDs and no function to actually change the colours in any way. We can do the brightness, but nothing else. So this is obviously a very good upgrade to the old C10. I'll just put this onto demo mode and it's going to cycle through a day basically. While we do that, we'll have a quick look at the remote because it has got some features to it. Strangely enough, I like the coloration of this remote being black. They're normally white. It's just a small thing, but it does actually look quite nice. This biggest draw of this remote to me is the 24/7 mode, which basically means that you can set this and forget it. You essentially press the 24/7 mode, you tell the unit what time it is using one of these buttons, and then it's going to cycle through an entire day for you from sunrise to sunset, getting brighter midday and then, you know, obviously getting darker as it gets towards the evening. And it also changes the colours as well, which is really quite a nice feature. We've also got different preset brightnesses. We've got 5000K and 12,000K. 5000K is obviously more towards the natural daylight side. 12,000K is more towards sort of a bluier white colour, and that allows us to actually tailor our light spectra. When we stick it over my tank in a minute, we're going to play around with these and have a little look, but that's a nice little feature. And then you can use these as well, these buttons on the bottom, to actually adjust your entire spectra. So you can adjust the amount of red, green and blue and white into the LEDs, which gives you full flexibility of the spectra that you obviously want to create. But I would imagine most people are just going to be using these 2 buttons here. So I just mounted it over this 4-foot tank, and if we turn it on, we can see how bright it is. I think that is doing a decent job at illuminating this aquarium. So putting this into perspective, this tank is 4 foot long by 2 foot deep by 1.5 foot wide, and it's doing a reasonable job at lighting it up. I would definitely say that you would need 2 of these lights for a tank this large, but that's fine because these lights are actually very reasonably priced, so having 2 of them isn't really an issue. And in fairness, if we look at this tank over here, I do have 2 NICREW lights over this tank, and it is much smaller, so I do recommend getting at least 2 of these lights if you do have a larger tank. Let's have a look at some of these remote features now, and I'm actually quite impressed with the different colour spectra here. So let's have a look at the 5000K. We can see it's a lot yellower, isn't it? And NICREW have actually said that the red LEDs on this particular light is 660 nanometers, which is perfect for growing aquarium plants. So we can be pretty confident that your aquarium plants, or in my case macroalgae, will be quite happy growing under these lights. What I am impressed with though is if you put it onto the 12,000K, we can actually see that it is starting to fluoresce this blue optodes macroalgae, which means that the output of this particular light might even be okay for growing some soft corals. It's actually a really nice spectra. Obviously the reason for it would be in freshwater. If you've got fish that are particularly vibrant, this blue spectra would actually bring out the coloration a lot better than the natural daylight, make your cichlids pop and things like that. So I'll just stick it on the demo mode and we can see what a typical 24-hour cycle is. So you're starting off with sunrise, getting more and more bright towards the middle of the day. You can see my fish aren't particularly bothered, or now I've spoken they've run off. Going more blue, and then we're getting towards night time now, the sun's going down and we have our sunset, and then the moon's out with our little night light. So really nice, isn't it? And like I said, you can just select what time you're on and it will just do that every single day. So, what do we reckon about this light then? I think it's pretty decent, isn't it? We've obviously gone through all the different features it has, and let's just be fair, many other LED lights have similar, if not the same features as this LED. Now, NICREW has become a pretty staple brand in the aquarium LED market, especially on sites like Amazon. This brand has actually become one of the ones that started off as one of these cheap Chinese brands and is now definitely in that sort of trusted area of budget aquarium lights. And I say budget because these are affordable LED lights. They're not skyrocket prices which some of the larger brands tend to charge you. That being said, even though they are budget lights, the quality of the build is really good. We've got our nice aluminium heatsink, we've got good covering for our LEDs. The LEDs themselves are apparently high quality. They're not the cheapest LEDs on the market, which some of the other Chinese brands could be. These ones are actually selected with quality in mind so that you can grow your aquarium plants. And they are making a big deal on their blurb about the red one specifically being a high quality 660 nanometer LED, which is specifically good for that chlorophyll peak for aquarium plants. So they're making a point that this LED isn't just another cheap Chinese LED. So let's trust them on that, I think, for the moment. It's definitely a step up compared to the previous model of the C10. We've seen my C10 previous model, and it has got a controller unit on the cable. They've changed it with the new model to go backwards basically with a remote control, and I think that's a good step because I find those controller units on the cable to be a little bit fiddly. They can be annoying to use, whereas a tried and trusted thing like a remote, it's simple, you point it, you select what you want, and it happens immediately. So I think that's a good step backwards, but also in a way it's a step forwards, right? And in terms of the LEDs, compared to the old C10, this is obviously much, much better. I did do an off-camera lux reading for this light, and I got a reading at 2 meters away of 2,400, 2,500, which isn't as bright as some of the other LEDs that I have done that test on. I'm using my phone light sensor. My phone is S22 Ultra, so we can assume that my light sensor is actually quite good, and I've used it on all my other lights tested as well. The brightest light that I've tested has been from Hygger, and that was just over 4,000 lux. This one has 2,400 lux. Not as bright as other brands, however, we don't know the PAR reading. We can assume, well, let's not assume, but NICREW are stating that the LEDs on here are designed for plants. This should have a good PAR reading in theory if we believe what the blurb from NICREW says. It's not all about how bright something is, it is also to do with the PAR output if you're talking about aquarium plants, and that is what NICREW are selling this light as. So let's assume that even though it's not as bright, the PAR is good. We won't know that until we test it over an aquarium with plants in, but my previous NICREW C10 has done a fantastic job at growing macroalgae, so put a bit of trust in the fact that this light can grow aquarium plants. In terms of lux, this is about equal to the Fluval AquaSky, because if I remember backwards, a long time ago when I reviewed the AquaSky, that had a lux very similar, around 2,300, 2,400. So if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, leave a like and also subscribe to my channel if you're not a subscriber. Once again, thanks for watching and happy fish keeping.